everyone. Welcome to another episode of Convos with Sazón with yours truly, Cata Mejía. Our guest for today is Peggy Kim. She is the founder and CEO of the Future Now Media Foundation. Happy to have you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm excited to dig into all the things. Kicking us off with you as a person, you as an individual. We'll talk about the work that you do and all of the titles that you've held in a moment, but I know that you are a proud Korean American, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about how your upbringing and that aspect of your identity has influenced your focus on diversity and culture throughout your career.
Well, that's a big question. I was born here in New York, so I'm a New Yorker through and through. My parents came over and from Korea. They met here in New York as graduate students, and so when they met, they got married. I was born. We used to live right across the street from Columbia University, which is where they were both attending. My father in the journalism school, my mother was studying psychology. And so kind of Columbia University campus was my backyard and playground. And I always thought, okay, I'm going to go to Columbia one day. And sure enough, I did. I did my graduate work there in international affairs. But it was interesting because when in our household, we only spoke Korean. So when I started kindergarten, I didn't speak a word of English, not a word of English. And so I might as well have come over straight from Korea because we didn't speak anything but Korean at home. So it was really, really tough. I cried every single day. Like, I do not exaggerate. I literally cried every single day, kindergarten, first grade, because I had no idea what was going on. And of course, at the time, it wasn't very diverse. People had never heard of a Korean before. Today there's like Korean restaurants on every corner, and everyone's like, "I love kimchi, I love
and there's
Korean
a whole
barbecue.
town for it, Koreatown, yeah,
Koreatown, and all of that." It was not a thing at the time, and so kids knew Chinese, Japanese, but they didn't know Korean, and they would do chinky eyes, and are you Chinese or Japanese? And then and it was I didn't understand what they were saying, but I knew that it was mean spirited, and I literally cried every single day.
Sorry.
When we moved from the city to Rockland County, which was very Irish, very Italian, there was three other Asian families in the neighborhood, and we all became friends, but it was not very diverse at all. But I learned English really through watching television, cartoons, TV, and I loved watching television. I loved Saturday morning cartoons, which I know is not a thing these days, but that's how we all grew up, and that's how I learned English. But that experience early on as a kid, not understanding what's going on, I made it my, I was so determined at that point. I'm like, I don't ever want to be in a situation where I don't understand what's going on. And so I love learning other languages. I studied Spanish in school, and then also in college. I've traveled to Mexico many, many times, Spain, and I just love, 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 love Spanish. I love singing in Spanish.
Will we hear some Spanish from you today?
Well, I don't know. I feel a little too shy for that, but like Luis Miguel, I have all of the albums. I also sing at church and choir, and I'm also part of the Spanish worship team. So I love the language, Spanish language. I studied Russian in college, and also Polish, and then later German. I learned a lot of languages. I forgot it because if you don't use it, you lose it. Yes, you absolutely need to practice. But I love learning about other cultures, and really that early experience of not being able to communicate, not being able to comprehend, definitely has influenced, my desire to learn of other cultures, to be conversant so that I can communicate with other people.
Mm-hmm.
I can also embrace them when they're in the situation that I was in, when they didn't speak English or they didn't
Mm-hmm.
have someone who could understand them.
Yeah.
And so my heart has really been, even, to this day and in the work that we do now, also as Future Now, like to embrace everyone, to truly be
Yeah.
inclusive.
Absolutely. You talked about a core part of your upbringing being surrounded by those who don't speak your language, don't look like you, or if they
Mm-hmm.
do, it's a very few,
Mm-hmm.
of like
Mm-hmm.
of the whole.
Yep.
Would you say that that also translated to the media that you consumed, which ultimately is it played such a role in you learning the language? Did you feel underrepresented based on what you saw as well?
I never thought about it, to be honest.
Mm,
We're just watching TV, we're
yeah.
enjoying, um, the stories. And, if I step back and, Connie Chung, not only
She's a
for,
terp.
not only for me, but for so many
Yes.
Asians, was such, in New York, it was Connie Chung on national news. It was Kaidi Tong on local news. Um, and you're like, wow, she, we look like, we're both Asian, we're Asian. And so, my heart was like, oh, Connie Chung is on TV. She's an anchor woman. I want to be an anchor woman too. I want to be like Connie Chung. And so many of us, felt like that and were inspired by her presence on television. And that inspired me to pursue a career in journalism. And I wanted to pursue broadcast journalism. And my first job out of college was at ABC News on the you know, uh, national broadcast. I was a desk assistant on the overnight news desk. So it was the graveyard shift. It was midnight to 8, 9, 10 in the morning, and kind of worked my way up. But it certainly has influenced, my
Yeah.
life for sure.
I know that your academic background is in political science and
Hmm.
international affairs. So,
Yeah.
how has that come into play with your love and your pursuit for media?
Um, it's all part of the whole.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I was studying at Williams College Political Science, it was during the Cold War. And so, my father said, you should learn Russian because if you want to be a journalist, you need to understand other cultures in order to, my father was a journalist. So he was a foreign correspondent, the chief correspondent for the Korea Times. He traveled all over the world. Everywhere he went, he would send us postcards. And so I have younger brother, younger sister, of my mom, our mom, and he would send us not just one postcard for the family, it was each of us would get a postcard. And those postcards were the windows to the world. It was the windows to seeing other people, other cultures, traditional costume, their
Yeah.
architecture, their, landscape. Like, and so, it was pre-internet. So that and, National Geographic magazines were really the
Yeah.
window to the world. Um, and so, my dad being my biggest influence, and hero,
Mm.
I wanted to follow in his footsteps, but kind of adapted to Connie Chung being on TV. So I wanted to be on TV. I thought I wanted to be like Connie Chung, and do broadcast because I love television.
Yeah.
Um, but studying political science, one of the things he said to me was, you need to read the newspaper every day. You need to understand what's going on in the world. You need to study other languages so that, if you want to be a foreign correspondent, you should, understand the culture, the context, so that when you're telling the stories that it's coming from, a much more rooted place,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, at the time that I was in school, it was during the Cold War. The Berlin Wall had just come down, and that was 1989. And I was a I was taking a class in political theory of civic action and social movements, and we were studying about the Solidarity movement in Poland. And at that point, I had taken 2 semesters of Russian, and the Berlin Wall came down, and I was like, oh my God, I have to be there. I need to see this for myself. And so I told my professor. It was his first time teaching. He was an adjunct, first semester teaching. He was 29 years old at the time. And I told him, I really want to go to Poland. I want to see this for myself. And his dissertation actually was on the Solidarity movement. And there was a moment in January, this was 1990, so just a few months after the wall coming down, and I'm playing ping pong with my friend in the rec room, and we're just playing ping pong, and all of a sudden I blurt out, I'm going to Poland. And her response to me was, okay. And I'm like, where did that come from, And so that was January 1990. I told my professor, and I was like, and so he went back to his professor. He got me a list of newspapers in Poland and the names of the editors in chief, the physical addresses of their offices. And I wrote to all of them. I typed up letters. I sent them in the post, international post. And, I followed up with phone calls in broken Russian, trying to communicate over the phone. I'm like, the moxie that took, because I really only had two semesters of Russian, and I'm trying to speak, and they're hanging up on me because they didn't like the Russians, and I was speaking very poor Russian. But then he gave me another newspaper, and this was the English edition of the Solidarity newspaper. And so I wrote to her. Jane Dobia, she was the chief editor, and I followed up again with a phone call. She picked up. She spoke English because she was American. I was like, thank you, God. So I told her, I said, I'm a student from Williams College. I am an aspiring journalist, and I am so inspired by what's happening in Poland right now and the fall of communism. And I want to be there. I want to see this for myself. Do you have an internship? I would love to. I'm willing to work my butt off and whatever you need. I'm looking for an internship. And she said, well, that's not how it works here in Poland. There's no such thing as an internship. And so I'm just listening to her at this point. And she said, we don't have anything like that. I would have to, go to the foreign ministry, get work authorization for you, and have you officially invite you to work for the newspaper. You'd have to, be a staff member. We'd have to pay you. So with every bullet point that she's giving me, my heart is sinking with every bullet point. And then at the end of her bullet points, she was like, so what do you think? And I was like, excuse me? She's like, what do you think? Do you want to come here and work? And I was like, yes. I was so shocked. I was like, I'm thinking everything she's telling me is
like
all the things
reasons it's not gonna
why
happen.
it's not going to happen. And in that phone call, she offered me a job. So I ended up in 1990, June. It was the summer after my junior year, actually. Summer after my junior year, working for the Solidarity newspaper, underground newspaper in English, Gazeta International. And I was editing the English version. My name is in the newspaper and everything. It was a life-changing experience. We're talking about culture. So you opened by calling me a Korean American. And yes, I am, but I've never felt, the whole thing of identity, because I didn't speak English when I first started kindergarten. I just thought I'm Korean. And then years later, when I was, it was after the summer after my freshman year in college, I went to Korea for the very first time and only time, honestly, because I haven't been back. But I went to Korea thinking I am Korean, and it was a program that was for Korean American kids, Korean kids who were growing up in America to come to Korea to learn about the culture and all of
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. Sponsored by UNESCO and the Seoul National University. And when I got to Korea, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I'm not fully Korean. I was like, there is a part of me that is American. But I spoke Korean, and when I was there, the Koreans were asking me, oh, you know, where are you from? Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Japan or did you grow up in Europe? And I said, no, I grew up in the United States, in New York. And that was an interesting conversation because they weren't pegging me as a Korean American, because the reputation of Korean Americans at the time was that Korean American kids were like super loud, they were spoiled and all of that
Mm.
stuff. And I was none of those things. And my accent was pretty good. I have a good ear, but they were like, it's not quite Korean. So, it was in their mind almost a compliment
Mm-hmm.
to not be identified as a Korean American. But I went home back to New York, back to my family, having a little bit of a shift. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm definitely not fully Korean. I straddle these two cultures as a
Mm-hmm.
Korean and as an American. Now, fast forward, going to Poland. So imagine the Cold War, right? The Berlin Wall finally comes down. If you were, part of the Soviet Eastern Bloc countries, you were very restricted in your travel. You weren't able to travel outside the East Bloc and outside of the Soviet Union countries. So when I came in to Poland, that, just a few months, you know, after the Berlin Wall came down, they had never seen an Asian before.
Mm.
So here I am walking the streets of Warsaw, and people are like, you know, doing double takes and stopping to see me because they had never seen somebody who looked like me
Mm.
in the flesh. And
How
so
did that feel?
it felt odd,
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I'm definitely different.
Yeah, to say the least,
To
in
say
their
the
eyes.
least.
Yeah.
But I have such a love for the Polish people because they were so incredibly generous and kind. When I first landed, my luggage got lost in London because I had to switch planes in London. It got lost in London. So I had nothing on me. And I only had the address of the office. I was wearing brand new shoes. Do not ever wear brand new shoes and
To anything, honestly.
to anything. And they had cobblestone streets. My feet have never been the
Oh
same.
my
But I
gosh.
walked the next day. I stayed at a youth hostel. I'm making a very interesting long story short. Basically, my luggage was lost. The place I was meant to stay was not existent.
Oh
So I
no.
ended up in a youth hostel overnight. And then the next morning, I woke up really early and started walking to the office. And there was no internet. I didn't have a map. I didn't have zlotys, which is the Polish currency. I had none of those things.
Oh my god.
I didn't know I'd never even taken a cab in New York. So to take a cab in a foreign country, I was like, how do I even ask where to go? How do I know? And if you know the Polish language, it's like four consonants next to each other. You're like, how do you even look at that and not have an aneurysm?
Yeah, like so much newness.
So much newness. And so I, studied a little bit of Polish on my own and asked, przepraszam pani, gdzie jest ulica Dzielna? Which is, excuse me, miss, where is Dzielna Street? And then they would try to look at the map and try to point me in the right. People were hand holding me. I mean, literally taking my hand, walking me for blocks, and then pointing me to the next
Wow.
direction to go. And that's how I got to the office like 3 hours later. So incredibly generous, so kind. Um, so I ended up staying with a family outside of Warsaw, half hour outside of Warsaw. And as I'm commuting on the tram, little kids are coming up to me, and I had a wristwatch on, and then they would like try to touch my skin, and they're like, "Przepraszam pani, która jest godzina?" Meaning, "Excuse me, miss, what time is it?" And they're like, the little kids are like touching my skin and stuff. And one of my commutes, an older gentleman, actually, asked me in Polish, you know, Hinska, or you're Chinese, Japońska, Japanese. I was just like, no, no. And then he asked in Polish, like, where were you born? So I said, United States. And he's like, oh, you're an American. In Polish, he's speaking to me. He's like, you're an American. I was so shocked by that because I had never been called an American. Never been called an American. I was born here every time. Like, where are you from? Where are you from? Like, I don't know how to answer that question. But the Americans are asking me, where are you from? And they're not looking at me as an American.
Mm.
But it took a Polish man, to understand what an American is.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the very first time I was called an American. That was like mind blown
Yeah.
revelation moment. And so today, given everything that we're seeing happening in this country, yes, I'm Korean. Yes, I'm Korean American. But yes, I'm an American. So I try to lead now as American,
I
like
love that.
I am an American.
Yes. Very clearly, Poland was a life-changing experience. It
Yeah,
sounds like an
in so
incredible
many different
summer.
ways, but
Yes.
that's one story.
From there, what happened? You went back to school to finish, I'm assuming.
Yep.
And then you started an ABC News with the goal of
Yep.
still being somewhat similar to Connie Chung.
Yes. So, it took me 5 months after graduation to get that job. I was writing ABC, NBC, CBS, which was kind of pre CNN. It was still the three major networks, writing every 2 weeks, and they all called me back at around the same time, which was like September, October, around the time of my birthday. And when I got the job at ABC News, that was it, because I watched ABC News. That was the network that I watched the most. So I got my foot in the door, overnight news desk assistant, and kind of worked my way up. And then 3 months into it, I got promoted to the day side and was working foreign news, the foreign news desk, World News Tonight, etc. And I really watched, um, how things go, because
Mhm.
no one was explaining anything to me or any of the desk assistants. Really, we were just like,
Especially in this industry.
yeah,
It's
no,
kind of like
nobody's
trial
telling
by
you
fire.
anything, and so you're just kind of thrown in, and you got to figure it out. And so a lot of my learning happened through observation,
Mm-hmm.
and I watched the women, the on-air reporters, correspondents, the anchor women, and the tremendous pressure they were under for their physical appearance.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, heck no. I'm like, I can't handle that. There's no way. I was not the kid that was in front of the mirror primping and spending hours like putting on makeup. I still don't even really do that today. Like, my routine is like 10 minutes, I'm done.
Same.
I'm out of here.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I've never been the one to spend a lot of time physically primping myself in front of the mirror, and to see them under so much scrutiny and criticism, even amongst themselves. And I was just like, I can't deal with that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It would be so, I just had no confidence in myself, in my physical appearance to undergo that kind of scrutiny,
Yeah.
you know? And so even in that and watching also all of the behind the scenes, like who's doing, I mean, not to say that on camera people don't do the work, they do, but the heavy lifting from my eyes was
Writers,
were the producers,
producers,
were
yeah.
the producers. And I was like, I want to do the work, you know, and I can't handle all of the pressure of the on-camera stuff. And so that's when I made the shift to more of the producing side and worked my way up through ABC, then ABC Sports. And between ABC News and ABC Sports, I went back and did my master's degree at Columbia,
Mm-hmm.
thinking I was going to go work for the UN because at that time I really wanted to be a foreign correspondent. And then they were starting to close all the foreign bureaus. It was becoming more of, you know, license the content from one news agency, AP or World Vision or
Reuters, yeah.
Reuters and things like that. So I was like, you know what, let me go work for the UN. I want to learn languages and other cultures and be on the ground and that kind of thing. And so that's what motivated me to do the master's degree at Columbia, because you need a master's to work at the UN. It's a prerequisite. But what happened was I got sucked back into the business, and my first job after finishing the degree was back at ABC Sports. So went to ABC Sports, NBC Sports, NBC Olympic Unit, CBS News Productions doing documentaries, and then MSNBC Headliners and Legends with Matt Lauer,
Mm-hmm.
and then covered the Jack Kevorkian trial for Court TV, and then went over to History Channel on the other side of the desk
Mm-hmm.
as a programming and production executive. Um, and so it's been an
Quite the
interesting,
journey, if I do say so
yeah, it's
myself.
been a great journey. And all of that leads into what I've been doing the last 10, 15 years. I started my own company, MGK Media, which is where I still do all my consulting and freelance work. I started building a company called I Stand TV, which is a
Mm-hmm.
content creator incubator.
Mm.
And I was building that company with interns. And as I was doing that, I was mentoring them, sharing with them about the industry, how it works. I was teaching them about the ecosystem, programming, production, storytelling. How does something get greenlit? What is that process? Um, and then opened up my professional network to them. And as I was doing that, that's how the seeds of Also Future Now came to
Yeah.
um, be planted.
Yeah, and we'll get
Yeah.
to that in a second. I'm curious to know, because you said so yourself,
Mhm.
when we first started talking off camera, that, after having been at all of these networks, you ended up being the first non-white, minority,
Mhm.
youngest at
Mhm.
the executive level.
Mhm.
What responsibility comes with that? Or what did you perceive and feel at the time being in those rooms, looking
Mhm.
around and being like, oh my gosh, there is no one else like me? A feeling that you've had before,
Yeah.
earlier in life in
Yeah.
different settings. Talk about that.
Um, you know what? I was always aware, but it was never something that I dwelled on.
Mm-hmm.
That, you could end up getting a chip on your shoulder or taking on a weight that it's like, you know what? It's not all of your responsibility.
100%.
And then sometimes, it can be a hindrance at times if you think about it too much. You just got to do the work. You're in the room.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the room. Take full advantage of being in the room. That takes time to develop that muscle, and that confidence and
Mm-hmm.
that awareness. But I didn't dwell on it. I was always aware, oh, like, wow, I am the only, or I'm the youngest. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't, I took it as an opportunity, like, okay, I'm in the room. What am I going to do?
I love that,
You know?
because I also want to know, maybe it's an extension of what you just said.
Mhm.
What personal values or philosophies have you learned to pick up and now apply in everything that you do and maintain, despite the fast nature of not only the industry that you're
Yeah.
so deeply involved in, but the
Yeah.
work that you've decided to continue.
Yeah. Thank you so much for asking that. I am a person of faith.
Mm.
So I'm a, you know, Christian, and I, became a Christian when I was 16 years old. And so my whole frame of reference of how I relate to people, how I treat people, how I treat what I do, it's rooted in my faith.
Mm.
My faith is not something that I'm not sitting here like, evangelizing. There are places for that, but when I think the most powerful thing that anyone can do is to live out their faith.
Mm.
It's not to use it as a weapon or just as language, but you have to embody what you believe. So I believe in honesty. I believe in truth telling. I believe in seeking the truth. I believe in embracing people, loving people, forgiving people, being gracious to people, um, having compassion. I believe in, sharing, being generous, serving one another. I believe that leadership is service
Mm.
and not to not a it's not a leadership is not about not about you as the leader. It is a posture and a privilege. you know we have so many people who are like, I want to be an influencer, I want to be on social media, I want to be this, I want to be that, I want to have followers, but what are you actually saying that is of value, that is of meaning, that is for edification, that is to uplift and to encourage? Those are all of the things that are informed by my faith, um, that I hope I'm living out well.
Well, the reason that I
Yeah.
asked, and I
Yes.
love how you answered that, because all of this getting to know you as a person first was
Mhm.
so important to set the stage for what it is that you do through the foundation.
Mhm.
So let's get to that.
Mhm.
Tell us about the Future Now Media Foundation, the seeds that you said you have planted. How have those come into fruition? From an outsider's perspective, looking in, knowing what the foundation does, I think it is a physical representation of everything that you just mentioned, of giving back, of sharing knowledge, sharing resources, sharing networks. So let's get into that.
Yeah. Um, I absolutely love what I do. And, did I one day think, oh, someday I'm going to run a nonprofit? I'm going to found, I'm going to establish a nonprofit. I'm going to call it Future Now. We're going to work with future leaders. We're going to do this and that. I'm like, that was never an idea in my head.
Mhm.
It was more of my love and passion for the industry.
Mm.
I love content. I love television. I love movies. I love films. I love stories. I love powerful stories. I love laughing and being entertained. I love the industry. So it is rooted in my love for the industry. But I also, from, I think I was born with this. I don't think anyone taught me this. It always had a very, very strong understanding of the power of media and the responsibility and what media and entertainment does. It is the bullhorn for culture. And so you can use it to lift up or you can use it to tear down. My goal always I think just born with this awareness of the power of media and the responsibility that comes with that. And so, when I see, things happening in the industry, I'm like, You need to be doing this better.
Mm-hmm.
How can, my burden for this industry, how do we make change? How do we embrace, all of these stories that we want to tell? How do we help future leaders coming into the industry um, really, how do we level the playing field? You
Mm-hmm.
know, I did not have mentors mentoring me throughout my career. I had people that I gleaned from more because, again, I am much more of a student of observation. And that's not to say people were not generous with me, at different critical points, but I didn't have that consistent mentor, somebody saying, you know what, I see something in you. I'm going to help you and teach you and take you through the things that I think you need to know because I see the potential in you to be a future leader.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So let me invest in you. I didn't have the consistent investor in me. So I ate because I gleaned and not because somebody was proactively feeding me.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
So, when as I was building my other company, I Stand TV, I was taking on my interns. Over 3 summers that I was doing this for I Stand TV, over 8 weeks, they came knowing little to nothing and then left in, over 8 weeks growing exponentially their professional networks, the idea of having a professional network, the, knowledge about the industry, knowledge about storytelling, production, and, how it works. Like, so I was like, okay, I'm watching, you know, these young people blooming before my very eyes. On the flip side of that, as I was introducing them to my colleagues, different companies in the industry, one friend in particular, and she was a senior executive at HBO at the time, and I would only ask for half an hour. Could you just please, meet with my interns for half an hour, talk to them about your background and things like that, and that's what I did with everybody. And so with her, she was like, "Oh, no problem. You know what? I'll take them for 2 hours. I'll take them to the commissary, take them out to lunch, introduce them to some people, and talk to them." And I was like, "Really?" I'm like, "I'm asking for 30 minutes and you give me 2 hours. Are you sure?"
And lunch.
Yeah, and lunch. And, I was like, "You've got to be so busy right now." She's like, "You know what? It's pretty quiet right now. It's a great time. No problem." Oh my God, thank you so much. So I prepared my interns for that meeting. I was like, "Come do your research on her, come up with your questions. We'll go over everything." We practice handshaking,
Mm-hmm.
eye contact,
Yes.
everything.
Which, to those who have had mentors or
Mhm.
professional development in any capacity, is common sense. But those who have not been exposed to
Yeah,
that, they will never
they
know
wouldn't
to
know.
think of those things.
Exactly. So we practiced all of that. Sent them off 12 to 2, 2:15. They hadn't even come back to me yet from that meeting with her. She sends me an email. And that email was another, it was a revelatory moment for me because in that email she said, "Wow, they were, thank you so much for sending them to me. They were, each one of them were so wonderful and they were so bright, so asked such great questions and so humble. And every single one of them talked about how inspiring you were. And thank you so much for sending them to me because with all of the baloney that we have to deal with on a daily basis, you reminded me what's important. So thank you so much for sending them to me." And at that time, it was the beginning of all of the mergers and acquisitions in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
It was just the beginning of that. And a lot of our colleagues were being laid off. And the more senior you are, the fewer those positions are because it's a pyramid, right? And so many of my colleagues and those who were also older than me at the time, who still had a good 10 years, 15 years in them before retirement, were having a really hard time landing their next positions. And so there was a sense of disillusionment with the industry. Um, despair,
Mm.
depression, just feeling really down. And so to see her so uplifted by her interactions with my interns, I was like, okay, there's something important happening here that I hadn't even considered, because I had only thought about how do we as the older ones pour into the younger ones.
Mm.
I hadn't considered the reverse benefit, and so to see her so uplifted and so edified by her time with them, it made me think about, okay, what's happening here?
Mm-hmm.
The industry is, with those mergers and acquisitions, it's, it's causing a lot of disruption, a lot of heartache. How do I help my colleagues future proof themselves in a sense? And I think it's always two things. First, you have to understand the technology. You don't have to be the expert and be the engineer, but you have to be aware of where the technology is taking the industry and be um, conversant and fluent about the technology.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
number two, you have to understand the generation that's coming up behind you, because as not only your consumers and your clients, but as your coworkers,
Mm-hmm.
as that generation, because it is a multi-generational workforce. And so how do we connect all of the dots? And I've always been of the mindset of how do we maximize opportunities? How do we hit multiple birds with the one stone?
I have to say, it is so refreshing to hear this, because I very much think that your mindset and the philosophy that you have communicated forward through the work that you're doing with Future Now is the solution to what I think continues to be a problem in an industry that I too love, which is this mindset of, if I had to start at the bottom and if I had to struggle, you do too. As opposed to, there are multiple seats at the table. Let me help you. Let me save you time. Let me pull you up. You know what I mean? So this is my way of saying thank you so much for the work that you're doing, because it is so important. I was not part of Future Now, but I was part of T. Howard Foundation, and they
You
do
will be part of
similar
Future
work.
Now moving forward.
And they do
Because we love T.
similar
Howard.
work.
Yes.
And I think it's so incredibly important to share knowledge and to have mentors. I've been very fortunate to have numerous mentors throughout my career who I can 100% say without, I wouldn't have, made certain decisions or wouldn't have made it as far as I have. And it's just so refreshing to hear that there are still people who believe in that importance, who are championing for that.
Yes.
And I know that in addition to, founding the foundation, you've also now taken it a step further and you have a conference, So talk about the conference. When did it start? What was the vision for it? How has it evolved?
Yeah. So, after having that experience with my friend at HBO, I was like, okay, how do I take this microcosm of an experience and massively multiply it?
Yeah.
And so that's how the idea for the conference came about. And so I took her out to breakfast and I was like, listen, Mika, I have this crazy idea. What do you think? She's like, that's a great idea. And I was like, what do
Where
I
do I
need to do?
start?
Where do you think we should? And she was like, I'm going to introduce you to some folks at HBO. I'm like, okay, great. I had no idea how many people she had invited. She invited, there were 7 people in that room. And it was the first, I was like, oh my God, there's like all these people from all these different departments. She had really put that incredible group of people together for me to come in and talk to them about Future Now. I didn't have a deck. I didn't have anything. I was just talking. And it was in that meeting that their head of marketing, um, he was like, and I had a name, and I said, it's Future Now. We want to put on this conference, blah blah blah. And he was like, you know what? That's a great name. And I'm like, I see it in my mind, and I see the now, NOW, somehow animating into WON, and it's like a future now is a future one. And my eyeballs came out, like, was like, oh my God, that's the tagline. That's our tagline. That's what it needs to be. And I was like, I'm always gonna give you credit. And he was like, you don't worry about it. I'm like, no, no, no. The credit is yours. Like, that's our tagline. And HBO came on board as our very first charter sponsor of the conference, which opened the doors for others to come in because they were like, oh, it must be
Yeah, if it's got a name like
worthwhile. It's
HBO.
HBO, okay, sign us up. And so, with our humble beginnings, that conference was in 2017.
Wow.
And next year will be our 10th anniversary of the conference. Even during the pandemic, when everybody was shutting everything down, the internships were shut down, the every event was shut down. March 2020, our conference was supposed to be in person in May. I made the decision, what do I do? Do I cancel? Do I postpone? We postpone, like, I don't know when the world is gonna ever come
Right.
back to normal. Like, this felt like Armageddon. But I decided to put everything online, and my whole team, which used to be a group of professionals, my whole team of putting that thing on was Future Now alumni, because we were going to use Zoom and put everything virtually. We were going to have a live event virtual. And I think, I wish I had proof, but I think we were the only ones crazy enough to put a full on conference, 3 days live, 2 months after the pandemic shut everything down.
And I am familiar with how much goes into these conferences because my very dear friend is involved on your team.
Mm-hmm.
So I can only imagine how much of an undertaking that was to convert everything that you had originally planned to do in person to now do in just as an engaging manner online.
Yeah.
So hats off, seriously.
Can I tell you, it was during the pandemic that we had exponential growth because we stayed committed to these students, and so many of them were feeling completely lost and hopeless.
Mm-hmm.
Classes canceled, internships canceled. It looks like the world is ending.
Mm-hmm.
People are dying all over the place. Like, what are we supposed to be doing? And so it was after that very first day of the conference, totally virtual. We were using the Zoom webinar. So you don't get to see everybody, right? Physically on camera. It's just the speakers. And I was like, oh, I really want to see these students. So at the end, as we were signing off for the day, I was like, hey, listen, here's another link for a Zoom meeting. Anybody who wants to come in, just, it's totally optional, totally optional. If you want to come in, I would so love to meet you. So come in and join us. So here's the link. So then I get on the link, and Cata, we had almost all of the students, over 100 students joining for that meeting. And the students, I was like, I would love to just hear from anyone who wants to speak. Just raise your hand and unmute yourself and speak. And students were crying. They were like, I didn't know what to expect from this conference. I felt so alone and lost, but I'm so grateful that you put this conference on. And I I was crying. There were other students crying, but it just meant so much to them. And so we have carried on in that way. And then yes, we just recently got recognized by the NCTA Education Foundation with the Changemaker Award.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So well deserved.
Thank you. And I was floored, honestly, because of the grant that they announced, which was, I've been to this event every year almost for the past 15 plus years as a volunteer. And so to be recognized with the Changemaker Award with an unprecedented grant that was announced.
And for those not familiar with how nonprofit work works,
Yeah.
excuse the redundancy, how much of an impact can that big of a grant have? Like, for example, I'm sure you're still figuring it out, but how does the foundation kind of invest that and put that forward in order to help even more people?
Yeah, I mean, it's a game changer for us because that's more than our annual budget.
Wow.
I started this, I wasn't even paying myself
Yeah.
for several years of doing this. And then it was like, you know, I'm still right now, I'm paid, I don't know. I don't even, I, it's so funny to talk about money, but um, for the level of experience and years that I've been in this industry, this is the salary of somebody who's just starting
Yeah.
work now.
Mm-hmm.
So this work has been very sacrificial.
Yeah.
Uh,
But correct me if I'm wrong, based on
mhm,
what you've said up until now,
mhm,
in terms of why you're doing this, it's
mhm.
not for the money. It's to help
Oh my gosh,
others.
it's
And that's not to
if
say that more money wouldn't be appreciated, let's be clear. However, the goal that you have set out to accomplish, it
yeah,
seems like year after year, you're increasing that impact.
yes, absolutely, yeah. I mean, it definitely has taken sacrifice.
I'm sure.
But that's where that's where the joy comes in,
Mm-hmm.
and why something like that announcement and that grant is just
It's heartwarming, honestly, to see that the very important work that you do is recognized at the level that it deserves. And I meant what I said earlier of so well deserved, because just like the summer in Poland and just
yeah,
like those who have helped you along the way in your career have quite literally changed the course of what you do, the resources that you are giving these students, the connections that you are making, the tips that you are sharing, the doors that you are opening for them to take it upon themselves to walk through are also life changing. You know, you
very
more
much
than
so.
anyone, I'm sure, is familiar with the numbers, but I can only imagine, you know,
Yeah,
in almost 10 years that you have officially been doing this, in addition to all of the unofficial seeds that you have planted that you mentioned
mhm,
earlier, you're quite literally changing lives. And I hope that you take time to recognize that continuously, and also that you've given yourself credit, you know, beyond the awards that you've received individually and then also
mhm,
as a
yeah,
foundation. Because I'm sure the recognition is great, but it doesn't necessarily explicitly talk about the sleepless nights, all the sacrifices that we
the
haven't
weight
even,
gain
well,
from so many hours just sitting in front of the
we don't
computer.
have to talk about the weight gain, but but let's talk
It's
about the
real, people.
silent battles, you know, that maybe someone in your position has to fight, the
Yeah.
sacrifices that you make in order to make this happen. What are things that people would be surprised to know?
Oh, I mean, it's hard. You abs it it absolutely. This work has to come from a place of conviction
Mm,
because it's too hard.
mm.
You know, it's not that it's too hard because obviously
You're doing
we're
it?
doing it.
Yes,
It
you
just
are.
takes conviction
Yeah.
and commitment, and then other people to cast catch the vision.
Mm.
You know,
Would you say that's the hardest part? Like having others believe in the vision as strongly as you do?
no, the hardest part is you saying you believe in the vision.
Mm.
Once you're convinced, listen, if I know that this is the thing, this is, or this product or this thing, like I I know that this is gonna work. This is
Mhm.
for everybody.
Yeah.
This is gonna help so many, and it's gonna uplift the industry. It's gonna make what we do so much richer. Like, you have to know it.
Mhm.
You have to know it. Once you know it, and then you share it, they're like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, yes, sign me up.
Yeah.
That's going to help me do this. That's going to help my kid do that. That's going to help our employees do XYZ. Um, you know, and it's ultimately, it is the atmosphere that we create.
Mm.
I don't have a staff. I mean, hopefully now with this grant, we'll be able to hire some people. Thank you.
Let's speak that into existence, please.
Yes. Um, but it's an army of volunteers. And that in it, you can pay anybody to do anything, period. You can pay anybody to do anything. But the testament here is that to have every year and a growing army of volunteers because they are catching the fever of generosity. They're catching the fever of service. They're catching the fever of they're feeling hope. They're feeling useful. They're finding purpose. You know, that feeds itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so the growth is organic because of that, because of the atmosphere that we create. And that's everything. So you just create the atmosphere of generosity, of service, of kindness, of listening, of compassion. Create the space, set the example,
Mm-hmm.
and then you just watching people like, yeah, I that's me too.
Yeah.
That's me too.
Let's talk about the evolution because I think the mission
Mm-hmm.
is the same because it's so important, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what that looks like, I'm sure, changes a little bit because the industry has changed, right? And from the moment that you started up until now, you now have more people benefiting from this, right? You
Mm-hmm.
probably have different themes for the conference. So, talk about how you challenge, or not how you challenge, how you balance the evolution of the industry and not only staying current with it, but maybe a step ahead, to set those up for
Yeah.
success who are being trained,
Yeah.
right? While still maintaining that vision and honestly leaning on the values that you talked about earlier.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's not that hard in terms of the way that I think about it. I'm not the expert in the technology. I'm not going to be the expert at this point in the AI. Like, I'm going to do my reading and all of that stuff, but I'm not the one teaching. Like, this is all people.
Mm.
It is the community that is actively working in their various roles, in their various parts of the industry,
Mm-hmm.
who are being brought in. So I'm creating the space for them to come in
Mm-hmm.
and for them to share their expertise, their knowledge, their perspective,
Mm-hmm.
their hard won wisdom. And so, you know, I feel like what I'm doing is just creating the space and inviting the people to come in
Mm-hmm.
to share the things that they have,
Yeah.
So like um in the Bible, there's a story about the fishes and the loaves, and
Mm-hmm.
suddenly you have only this amount of fish and this amount of loaves, and you've got a crowd of people that need to eat. And somehow Jesus multiplies it for everybody so that everybody has eaten and everybody is full. This is like everybody has something to contribute. Like somebody had a cup, somebody had some water, somebody had a fork, a knife, napkins. Like somehow everybody had something to contribute.
Yeah.
So for me, future now, I'm just creating the programming uh, and the opportunity for the people who are doing that specific thing in the industry to come in and contribute
Mm-hmm.
that thing. I'm providing the mentorship opportunities because the mentorship is core to everything that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So the mentorship shows up in the conference as speed mentoring events, in the networking opportunities, in the follow-up opportunities. We have a 9-month mentoring program, which recently got written up in Forbes, was featured in Forbes. And that mentoring program, we're now in our 7th year. And we expanded it to 25 mentor mentee pairs this year. And so once a student comes through the conference, they're considered Future Now alum, and then they're eligible to apply for the mentoring program, the 9-month mentoring program with a one-on-one match with somebody from the industry. And so this year we had also a record number of applicants for the mentoring program. We grew it from 20 for the last 20 mentees to 25 mentees this
Mm-hmm.
year. Um, the Forbes article was really interesting because, you know, I'm just doing everything that to me makes sense.
Yeah.
That's logical. I didn't think that this mentoring program was just so extraordinary, but according to the author, who's, you know, Mark Murphy, who's runs Leadership IQ and has been 30 plus years on the leadership management
Hmm.
coaching side, executive coaching, and all of that side of the business. He's like, no, what you're doing is actually very, very different because we have built in a lot of accountability into our programming. So without even going into details about that, like I'm just doing the things that I think make
Yeah.
sense,
Totally.
you know.
For extreme clarity,
Yeah.
there seems to be two sides, to put it super simply, of Future Now. There's the students, right? Is there a specific age range, or is it high school? Is it college? Is it both?
We're focused more on college and recent graduates.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the other aspect to it, right,
Mm-hmm.
is power players in the industry. Does
Mm-hmm.
it range in the roles that they have? Are they at the executive and senior level, or is it all over the place?
It's the range. So it's the
Okay.
gamut. So, you know, our speakers at the conference, they range from super senior executives to mid-level executives to early career professionals. That also is true of our mentoring, speed mentoring sessions and such.
Okay.
And so that is also by design. So our board members are multi-generational.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, our youngest is still within the first 5-7 years of her career. Our most senior, you know, not age wise, but in terms of
Experience.
experience and titles, chief programming officer at a major network, you know, so it ranges, and that is by design.
Mm-hmm. It's
Because
representative of the industry as well.
yes,
Like you said, multi-generational
right.
workforce.
So, you know, when we talk about the speakers, the mentors, the volunteers, it is truly multi-generational as well.
Yeah.
And so we're not just looking for, you know, I've been to so many industry events at this point in my life, having been in the industry for 30 plus years. It's always the usual suspects, right? Who are awesome, but it's like it's always the same people speaking.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? I want to program this differently
Mm-hmm.
so that we're giving opportunities for those mid level managers who may not have had speaking opportunities yet. So we want to give them the speaking opportunities because that's also, you know, as I was coming up through my career, a lot of people of color, for lack of a better word,
Mm-hmm.
we get stuck in that mid level management. We may hit VP, but to get past the VP level and become the SVP, the EVP, and the CEO and the CMO and all of those things, it's much harder.
Mm.
And so my goal through Future Now is to not only, you know, the life cycle of a student, life cycle of somebody coming in through Future Now, no matter where they're at in their journey, whether they're still a student or mid-level, early career, or senior. I want them as soon as they come in, I want them for the rest of their lives. So a student coming in might come in for the conference, they become an alum, they, you know, get into the mentoring program, they're mentored. Now they're entering their careers and they're, you know, advancing through their careers, but they're coming back to Future Now, you know, because they're always going to get some, they're going to get fed.
Yeah.
They're going to get
And
fed.
as they gain
Gain
experience, they will feed it
experience.
back.
Yes, exactly. So they will come in as speakers, they will come in as volunteers, they will continue to hone their skills. They're like, I started in this career track, but I really want to be more on the creative side. There are opportunities for them to volunteer on the marketing committee or as writers on the Now or doing graphics or whatever the
Mm-hmm,
case may
mm-hmm.
be. They'll always have an opportunity to be fed and to feed others, you know, to
I
be
love that.
served and to continue to serve. So
Yeah.
that should keep going through your career as you continue to advance.
Yeah.
You become future donors, future sponsors,
Mm-hmm.
future
Mm-hmm.
mentors, future speakers, um, future board members,
Yeah.
etc.
That's beautiful.
You know.
I want to end on a forward facing note.
Mm-hmm.
And, you mentioned next year will be 10 years of the conference. You mentioned recently receiving an unprecedented grant. What is an inside scoop that maybe you can give us? What can we look forward to? What will be different as a result? What are you thinking in terms of maybe incorporating into the mix that you haven't been able to up until now? Talk about that. Anything you can and want to share.
Yeah. No, you know, I'm looking forward to hiring somebody soon. That is huge. Because here, chief CEO, chief bottle washer, etc. But yeah, I'm looking forward to hiring. I'm looking forward to doing more programming, and
Yeah.
so different programming too. So we want to create a true membership platform. We want to create a Future Now Leadership Academy, where you would take a bunch of like these. It's in process, but like that, have all of these like leadership courses, and then at the end of it, you would get a Future Now like leadership certificate. So I'm working with some people on that right now, which I'm super excited about. Now it's not just on paper. Now it's like, oh, we've got money to actually make some stuff happen.
Yeah.
Um, I'm also thinking about a Future Now agency where you know we could have, the mentorship would always be a part of everything.
For sure.
But like if we had a client to do something and we could do it at a lower cost,
Yeah.
with Future Now alumni, students, with mentorship and oversight from professionals, so that you're getting a professional product. But um it would be a Future Now agency.
And it's a
so
win-win
stuff like
because
that.
those producing that work can say this is a portfolio that has been used in a professional
Exacto.
capacity.
Exactamente.
I love that. Oh, we did get some
Sí.
Spanish there. Okay. Listen, Peggy, it has been such a pleasure. Honestly, I have believed in the mission of your work, and now I'm only more of a firm believer. If there's anything that I can do to help, to continue to spread the word on everything that you're
I
doing.
got stuff for you to do.
Oh, I'm ready. I'm ready. Call me in. Thank you so much. De
Thank
verdad,
you.
muchas gracias
Muchas
por
gracias.
compartir tu historia. And, may this continue to be such an inspiring path for others to hear from, to learn from. Hopefully those watching and listening also reach out and they're like, hey, I want to help. However, they are able to. But I'm excited for what I'm sure is going to be a phenomenal collaboration.
Thank you so much. You're a star.
Oh, thank
So
you.
I look
Thank you.
forward
Thank
to
you.
your future.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening and watching. Until next time.